Welcome to the Building Pathways to Healthy Minds podcast, where we share real world strategies to nurture children as they grow. I'm your host, Priscilla, and today we are diving into the subject of anxiety in parenting. How can we deal with our stress and anxiety? Tools for not passing that down to our children and recognizing it in our children. And this topic is so near and dear to my heart because it's part of my growing up experience and something I also worry about in parenting. It's so funny. I feel like I have anxiety about anxiety sometimes. So let's get into it. Today, I have a super special guest to me. She's a good friend, a former office mate, Amy Oxener, who has been a family therapist in Katy, Texas. She is a mother of two and a great friend. So let's get started. Hi, Amy.
Hello.
Amy essentially stole my job at Child Builders about 10 years ago. I had interviewed with our boss, Amanda, and I couldn't start. And they ended up going with Amy, which was a great choice. But I ended up stalking Amanda for a while after I moved back to Houston and saying, please, please let me come work for you. And then we got to work together and even shared an office for a while.
Yeah.
And that was fun days.
I think it's just so cool seeing how relationships just blossom.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's really special when you love the people you work with and you're able to build such a sweet friendship and connection. Um,
I think that was my favorite parts of Child Builders was
yeah.
really like the people. I loved what we were doing, but I'm gonna be honest, when I first started, I kind of didn't know what we were doing. I was just like, I like the people and this is gonna be great.
Yes, I knew I could always just look at you and we would laugh
Right.
when we needed to laugh.
Exactly. All right. So tell us what you're up to now, because you're not at Child Builders, sadly, anymore. But tell us what you've been doing since then.
Yes. So after Child Builders, I was obviously in the prevention side when I was there. And so then I moved into school social work and doing more direct work while I was working on my clinical hours and loved the schools, loved doing direct work. I was in a middle school and then in elementary school. And so then I moved into group private practice, working directly with children and families. And now I have my own private practice. And I am now a registered play therapist and licensed clinical social worker. And I specialize in working with kids with anxiety, with ADHD. I really love working with the littles, and helping give parents tools to set them up for success. I think going from Child Builders, I got to see the impact of how needed it is to start at an early age.
Absolutely.
So that's really what kind of drove my work to work with the younger ones.
It's so important. So I'm always a big advocate for, even if you aren't seeing like something huge going on with your kid, but you're noticing little things. Because I think, and we're going to get into this, we all have pieces of anxiety. I think for me, I definitely deal with it now, but I was dealing with it as a child. And
Mhm.
instead of like talking about it, which I've said this on other podcasts, I had a very wonderful family, but we kind of like we're used to pushing things down, just being like,
Mhm.
eh, you know, that'll go away. It'll go away.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And I think it kind of just all exploded. Just my personal story was I was leaving home at 17 and all of a sudden my brain like couldn't cope anymore with all that stuff and it all just kind of came out. And I think if I had had some prevention and some,
Mhm.
therapy over the years to just like talk about all these little things that we're building up
Mhm.
and have
And how to like
strategies.
process it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and strategies which I never had. My strategy literally was stop being anxious. Just stop. So giving kids, oh my gosh, 3, 4, 5, 6 year olds tools to do that. It's huge.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I remember as when I was younger, I would have a lot of not I guess they were nightmares, just like
mhm.
scary dreams that
Yeah.
really aren't scary now looking back, but I was scared at the time. And being anxious going to bed at night, and my mom would always tell me, sing a song. Sing
Hmm.
a song to try to change the thought processing of just ruminating on these bad dreams. And I, to this day, still do that.
Oh,
When
that's
I
awesome.
and I honestly, people are like, "Well, what song is it?" I'm like, "I cannot tell you." It just it's like so ingrained in my head that it just pops up when I'm starting to
Yeah.
feel anxious and need to rethink of something.
Mm,
Which I think that tells you a lot about how brain development works, is like you need to practice these strategies.
yes.
You're not just gonna do it when you feel anxious.
It's like that, like building a new pathway in
Yes,
your brain,
absolutely. Yeah.
which I have found just pushing it down is not building a pathway. It's actually, I heard a couple years ago this idea of pathways in our brains, and the more we kind of like push something down, but it's still there, it's actually becoming more ingrained. So anxiety for me just saying don't think about it right now was actually like causing a deeper road
Yeah.
to that anxious thought or that behavior.
Like a volcano, it's gonna explode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when you're, when your kids are struggling, create that new pathway, whatever that is. If it's a song, if it's changing the end of, a bad dream that they've had, like let's change that story.
I think
So,
that's such a key piece in, play with kids. So as a registered play therapist, that is a huge piece that we do is storytelling and
mm,
changing the story and adding in the strategies. So like you can use the same story, but if it's almost traumatizing to them, you can use like animals or characters to
mm.
tell the story. So it kind of removes them from the situation.
Ooh, I like that.
Um, but yeah, a lot of the parallel storytelling is so magical. I love that word, magical, for it.
That's very cool. I never even thought about that. Like still dealing with the actual story, but
Mhm.
taking the like things that would be scary, you being in that story out of it,
Yes. Yeah.
talking through it with
Mhm.
something else, stuffies or
Yes.
toys. So a few weeks ago we did a podcast on empathy, and the idea of enemies of empathy came up, which kind of just was spur of the moment, but really that has stuck with me, that idea of what stops us from being present with our children and having empathy. And for me, I mentioned on that podcast that anxiety is definitely a huge enemy of empathy for me. Often our kids are going to do something to express feelings, but because we're anxious and we're dealing with the emotions of the moment ourselves, and anxious, that takes us out of the moment. We forget about empathy and we just respond anxiously. Why do you think, why do we do this? What about parenting causes us to do that?
I think this is like such a cool question. I haven't really thought of it this way, but yes. Yes.
Because on another note, you are a parent as well. We didn't say that, but
Oh,
you
yes,
have
yes.
you have
I'm a
two
parent
little
of
ones.
2 littles, a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old, so I'm
Oh,
in the thick
awesome.
of it.
Yep.
And yes, like, the frustration, the irritation comes out when we are, have that immediate response when we should just show empathy because you don't know what their brain is processing. But we parent based off of our own experiences. And so our own anxieties creeping in
Yep.
without us even knowing it.
Yep. I remember this one story that I think about from time to time when I'm parenting, where I was a teenager and we were in Pennsylvania at my uncle and aunt's house, and they lived, you had to kind of go upstairs. They lived on like a top part of like a two-story house. And we were coming downstairs and it was dark. We were about to go on a big road trip, and it was my mom and dad, brother and I. And my dad said, "Hey, watch out. The stairs are covered in ice." And it was a lot of stairs. And I was like, la, 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 I'm 16. I'm like, it's fine. I'm 16. I don't need that. But I ended up slipping. And I remember his first reaction, and my dad was lovely and such a good dad. But in this moment, his first reaction was, and it was 4 a.m., it's dark. So he's tired, and he got angry at me, and he was like, "I said, don't slip." And at the time, I was just like, "Oh, like I'm hurting. Why is he mad?" And I think now I'm like, "Oh, he was," because I do it all the time. like he was parenting out of anxiety. Like it was really his worry for me and worry for the situation that caused him to respond with kind of like anger, being upset
Mhm.
versus, hey, are you okay? Like that stinks. And I try to remember that in parenting, but I do that all the time, where it's like, I'm worried she got hurt. So it's like, why didn't you
Yes,
listen?
yes. I
Yeah.
think that comes with anything. Like, if your kid goes outside to play, it's so different these days, but, like, be careful. Do you have your, like, tracker on? Can I find
Yep.
you? Be careful. Like, that be careful word is just telling
Oh,
them that we are anxious.
right. And they should be too. And
Yes. Yes.
that is, you bring up such a good point that I hadn't really thought about on this podcast, but I struggle with where is the line
Mhm.
between I do want her to be safe, but
Yes.
I find myself trying to really be careful. I just said it. That's funny. Try to stop. I try to be mindful and not always just say, be careful, be careful, be careful. Because I feel like that is instilling this like anxious atmosphere where it's like,
Mhm.
I don't want her to be scared of the world. I want her to take chances. I want her to not be anxious. I don't want her to grow up like what I did,
Mhm.
where things worried me all the time. I want her to be a kid. So where is the line between we're protecting our kids in some ways and we do want them to be careful, but not to where we instill that anxiety in them. And how do we do that? Is there even,
Yeah.
I don't know that there's an answer, but
I think it's a yeah, you're right. I think it's a balancing act.
Mhm.
Uh, there is we want to teach kids independence, that they can problem solve, so that they can make choices
Yeah.
for themselves. And so if we are constantly doing things for them or telling them to be careful, we're taking that away from them.
Yeah.
We're just saying, we're doing it for you, and this is not safe, don't do it.
Yeah.
So that's the underlying message. And so if we walk hand in hand with them, such as I have a 3-year-old, say that this we're walking down the stairs, I'm gonna hold your hand and walk down the stairs instead of standing at the bottom and said, be tell him to be careful. The more you can instill those pathways and create that pathway of, oh, my mom has confidence in me to do
Yeah.
this. She's helping me through it. And I think on that is like things that you could say is the encouragement piece, like talking to them about what they're actually doing. So, oh, do you see this ice? What happens if we were to move too fast on the ice?
Hmm.
Instead of saying, be careful, because that's not really teaching them anything
Exactly.
other than being anxious.
Right. Right.
um, but having them problem solve. Oh, this ice is slippery.
Yeah.
I need to watch what I'm doing.
I can be in control and
Yes.
make choices. It's
Yeah.
really good. Yeah. I was thinking about how empathy or anxiety is the enemy of empathy. It's also the enemy of being mindful and being in the moments with our kids. So, do you have any strategies, maybe even ones you use, to be like in those moments when you can tell? Like, I think the first step is just being like, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious. But, like, what are some strategies we can use as parents to get back into the moments?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a big struggle for me
Mhm.
and for everyone.
Yeah.
Um, but I think what you said was, "Oh, I'm so anxious," just to being able to identify it is the
Yeah.
first thing. Because if we are just, like, so caught up in it, it's hard to even, like, take a second and be like, "What is going on?"
Yeah.
Until after the fact. Usually, it's after the fact.
Right.
And so just being able to identify it in the moment, "Oh, I'm anxious. What is driving my anxiety?"
Yeah.
Is it your rush for time? Is it you feel out of control? Are you sensory overload?
Mhm.
Naming all mine.
I was gonna say that's probably a big one of mine. I'm like, everyone get out of the house right now.
Yes. Um, so and I actually haven't thought about time being an anxiety trigger until you talked about it on, I think, y'all's first
Mhm.
Child Builders podcast. And I was like, "Oh, that hit me in the gut."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so
We're
me.
all so fast paced, and it's not a bad thing to have a lot going on, but it definitely makes me not be able to be in the moments.
Mhm.
Because I think that's anxiety too, is all the like, what's going to happen? So, where do we need to get to? What do I have to do to get there? What's going to happen when I'm there? It's like all those thoughts versus like right now, I can
Mhm.
talk to my daughter about, school and like, for us, we like to like try to bless her. Actually, even saying that, I feel like we haven't done that in a while, but like bless her as she goes to school. And that requires being in the moment and saying, like, I'm going to be right here. I'm going to bless you on your way out the door versus being frustrated. Like, get your shoes on, get this, go out.
Mhm.
You know, it's hard.
Yeah, because you're like, "Well, I don't have time to be in the moment."
Right.
Your
Right.
anxiety is telling you all these lies.
Exactly.
And so, yes, recognize it, challenge it.
Mhm.
Why is this so important to me right now? What is
Yeah.
more important than being in the moment with my child?
Yeah.
And then also like being mindful,
Mhm.
doing some deep breathing. What works for you to regulate your system, your nervous system?
But it's so hard. That is so hard as a parent when we're dealing with the anxieties of what we have to do for that day.
Mhm.
Um,
I
and
think this plays into like in my profession, dealing with the impulsivity behaviors or the anxious behaviors with my clients. I worry so much every time my child does something. I'm like, oh, does he have ADHD? Does he have anxiety? What is this telling me? And so my mind is constantly on drive,
yeah,
making me anxious, trying to look through the themes of my own child.
yeah.
Uh, so it makes it very hard to be in the moment. Um,
That would be, I didn't think about that. That's like you're constantly probably second guessing everything you're doing and seeing
yes.
because it is your profession to like look carefully at behaviors and talk through them and also that has to be exhausting getting home having done that all day
Mhm.
and then be like, okay, now I'm going to be mindful for my own kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the drive home is key for me. I have to like take a second before walking through that door
Mm.
and tell myself those affirmations and those the positive change of the way I'm thinking. Because if I walk in a very negative state, it's not going to be a good night.
Yeah. So, like I even love that as a really good practical example where and we talked about this in one of that same podcast you were mentioning how sometimes it's even just taking that moment to be like even though I'm anxious, even though I've had a rough day, even though I don't want a lot of stuff going around me, I can do it like almost like a self check. Like
Mhm.
I need to check in, where am I? Where are my emotions? And then I like how you said like give yourself affirmations or just reminding ourselves constantly, even when we fail, we mess up, like it's okay. I can be mindful this next moment. I was
Mhm.
thinking about my mind was off in a million other places, but like, okay, bring it back. Are there any other strategies for, I don't know, when we see our kids responding anxiously to our anxiety, ways we can avoid that or things we can do?
I think I touched on teaching them problem-solving skills.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Uh, so helping them breaking
Mm,
down their worries, asking like, "What's the worst that can happen? How can we handle this together? How can we look at this differently?"
yeah.
Right now in their brains, the anxiety is so overwhelming. Same with us, like when we are anxious, it's so overwhelming we can't think straight.
Yeah. It's too much at one
Yeah.
time.
Yes. So you have to break it down.
Mm.
Uh,
I love
but I
that
think
because,
go
yeah,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I tend to want to just fix it
Yes.
because that's easier.
And it's like the time
Yeah.
anxiety.
So how do you break it down with a kid that you would see in maybe in your office and they're just emotions are big. You can tell it's a lot of anxiety going on.
Trying to figure out what is the trigger, what is causing the anxiety specifically. So, for example, if a child is not wanting to go to school because they have stomach aches, and when they're saying they have stomach aches, not wanting to go, refusal to go, what about school is it? Did
Mm.
you throw up last week and now you have a fear that that will happen again? Do you have somebody picking on you at school? Is it one specific class? Is it the chaos of lunch and recess, no structure? What is the specific thing that is in your head? Because we don't know what's in your head.
Yeah.
So identifying more specifically what is causing the anxiety, and then actionable steps of how to work through it.
Yeah.
I think the what ifs just cycling over and over again.
Mhm. That's so hard. Because there's no
We
way to fix that.
correct. Yeah. We have to ask ourselves what is in control. There's a really good book
Mhm.
that I like to read with kids called The What Ifs. Yes. The What Ifs by Emily Kilgore
Okay.
and Wilma Jean the Worry Machine by Julia Cook.
Okay. I have that one over on my hutch right now.
So good. The Wilma Jean one teaches you worries that you can control and worries that you can't
Mm.
control. And like they do in the book, they do the activity, but then I do that with clients too, writing what are your what ifs, what are you worried about, and writing them on a note card. So you're breaking it down and then putting the ones that you can control in the top and the ones that you can't control in the bottom.
Mm.
And so, okay, you can control this. How can we change that? How can we think about it differently? How can we change our thought?
It's
Because a lot
basically
of
like
times, yeah, go ahead.
it's teaching kids to get to the core again, kind of what we talk about in healthy parenting, which is
Hmm.
taking a second and like besides all the crazy that's happening, getting to the core of like why, what's
Yeah.
really bothering me.
Hmm. And what is underlying that? Is
Mhm.
it our self-esteem? Is it trauma? Is it uh feeling rejected?
That's so good.
Because in peers, a lot of times it has, I mean, in kids, a lot of time it has to do with peers.
Yeah. And maybe they haven't even thought through that.
Correct. Yes.
Just like they put up this wall quickly.
Hmm.
Or maybe they go to the like what ifs because they think the more they worry about it, they're actually controlling it,
Hmm.
which all it's really doing is creating those pathways to worry more. So, what are some signs that you would say are what are some signs that kids might be struggling with anxiety?
I would say the repetition,
Mm,
the frequency,
mm,
like the frequency of how the intensity, let's say intensity and frequency of how often behaviors are happening, whether
okay.
that's like constant worry or concern about friends, concern about going to school, any social situations, or the complaints of stomach aches, headaches. It's coming out somatically, it's coming out with
Mm.
physical symptoms when there's no medical cause. You've kind of taken that away, or you've already been to the doctor to figure that
Or
out.
maybe they're like fine when they're at home, and all of a sudden they're always having a stomach ache when it's time to go to school,
Yes,
or it's
absolutely.
a scary situation for them.
Yeah. I'm gonna highlight some of the ones that I see the most.
Yeah.
So those two I see a lot. Perfectionism, like
Mm,
fear of making mistakes, extreme self-criticism,
mm.
redoing things excessively till it's right, or having an outburst or refusal to do something because it's not going to be good enough, or you tried and it didn't work out the way you wanted it to, like homework.
Almost like apathy at some
Mm-hmm.
point, just like I'm not even attempting that.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Because I'm
Right.
not, it's too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would make sense because anxiety can be paralyzing.
Yes. Yeah. And then also like the difficulty concentrating.
Hmm.
So if your anxiety is so high, you can't focus
Yeah.
because your what ifs are going off.
Hmm.
And so you forget things often or you're zoning out, but also the fidgeting, the moving around, not sitting down. A lot of times we think of that as ADHD, but the driving factor could be anxiety. And
Absolutely.
the that's our behaviors of trying to cope.
Like not being able to sit still and attend to something because we're kind of, it's almost like avoidance technique in some ways. Like
Mhm.
if I sit still, I'm going to feel all the anxiety.
Yes.
Or I'm going to have some thought come that I don't like. So I can just like be moving or avoiding it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good.
And that goes with like the irritability and the mood swings.
Mm,
And again, all of these are can be typical developmental behaviors. It just depends on the frequency and
yes.
intensity of it.
Like, is it interfering with daily
Daily
life?
life. Yeah.
We talked a lot at Child Builders about yoga with kids. Are you still a fan of that? Do you ever do that?
Yes. Yes. I love
That
yoga. I
I
have
just
little yoga cards that they can choose what they want to do. And then there's a ton of YouTube yoga for kids that teaches mindfulness.
yes. Like all those skills that I feel like I didn't really get growing up, but I wish I had, where, almost like going back to your mom and the song, that was kind of like teaching you a bit of a mindfulness strategy of like, I can be safe right here, right now.
Mhm.
And I love that too about yoga and mindfulness activities where it's like, what are you seeing? What are you feeling right now? Let's breathe. Um,
Mhm.
it's just, those are really, really great strategies. And I need to
And
do that.
when working with kids, I think it's so important for psychoeducation too. So telling them what anxiety is and what's happening in their brain so
Mm,
they can understand it. Because right, a lot of times it's just overwhelming to them and they don't know what's happening. They just like it's a stomach ache. So how can we tell them that it is anxiety and not just a stomach ache?
yeah.
Like the anxiety is creating the stomach ache. Because you can't address it, you can't work through it if you're not able to identify it.
So if you could give one piece of advice to parents or educators about anxiety, what would it be?
I would say connection
Mm,
and empathy are keys to unlocking it with children, anxiety with children. And I think there's a difference in responding from a calm place and showing empathy
mhm.
versus giving in to the anxiety.
All right. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast. I definitely did. It's always fun reconnecting with Amy.
Yes.
We'll have to have her on again. And yeah, this has been super eye-opening for me. And even if it's things we know, it's so good to be reminded and just say, like, today I'm gonna be in the moments or try to be and give myself grace, give our kids grace, our students grace. Yeah.
So much goodness in that. Yeah,
Yeah.
give us grace.
Yeah. And even in our failings, man, even knowing all this stuff, and we touched on that, like we're still not the perfect parent. we,
We
you
will
know,
never be.
no, there's just no way. There's just too much of life in us and things we're going through that like, but the important thing is that we're trying, learning constantly.
Hmm.
And yeah. So thank you. I'm so glad you were here.
Thank you.
Yay.
Yeah,
Um,
so fun.
Thank you for listening today. I loved hanging out with you. And I really enjoyed reconnecting with my good friend and child counselor, Amy, who walked us through strategies to help ourselves and our children deal with anxiety. We talked about how prevention and talking to our kids about their anxieties from a young age is key. How we can't always fix anxiety, but we can reframe anxiety by talking through fears, giving them tools to feel calm, such as singing, yoga, breathing, and how we walk alongside them and teach them problem solving skills to create healthier pathways in their minds and help them overcome anxiety. Two books that we talked about today for kids and anxiety are The What Ifs by Emily Kilgore and Wilma Jean, The Worry Machine by Julia Cook. I hope this was so helpful. And as always, you can check out more information on childbuilders.org and leave us comments or questions. We enjoyed and are so honored to have you today. And I hope that you enjoyed it as well. Until next time, bye.